Good morning. I am today's presenter, Tia Anderson. I am the Program Services Representative for NC 529, North Carolina's College Savings Plan, and NC Assist, North Carolina's nonprofit lender at College Foundation Incorporated. So, super excited to be hosting this conversation today. For today's discussion, we do realize that whether you are a parent, an undergraduate or graduate or professional student, that you are planning for this upcoming academic year. And we want to be able to best support you, especially if you are anticipating or experiencing a funding gap. So what we will do is cover what a funding gap is, how does it appear, and then we will talk about ways to close that gap if it does exist. We will cover NC Assist student and parent loan options, and lastly, how NC Assist can best support you. So, what is a funding gap? So, when you think of the types of funding, there are a number of funding sources. It could be self-pay options, scholarships, grants, federal loans, private loans, maybe even a 529 plan. These are all funding sources. And when we think of tuition and fees, housing, and student living expenses, the goal is that within these funding sources, that whether we're using most or some, that they are helping us with covering the cost of tuition and fees, housing, and student living expenses. So self-pay options may be things such as maybe you are choosing to pay for your education yourself. Maybe you are choosing a, checking or savings account, or maybe you're working directly with your college or university to set up a payment plan, but you are choosing to use self-pay as an option. However, there are scholarships, institutional scholarships, community scholarships, grants, federal loans, private loans as well, if you are familiar with the use of them, which we will cover in today's conversation. And even 529 plans, if you are someone that has been saving early and maybe even consistently, these are all types of funding sources that one may choose to use. Not every student is going to have the availability of all of these sources. However, these are just a few examples of some of the sources of funding and how you would use them to pay for tuition and fees, housing, and student and living expenses. But what I want to capture today is, what is a funding gap? And what does a funding gap look like? A funding gap is when you find that your tuition and fees, housing, and student living expenses may exceed the types of funding that are available to you. So let's say that you've explored some of these types of funding. Maybe you have scholarships and grants, maybe you have a few federal loans, but you're finding that there's still a gap. There's still this gray area in between the funding that has been made available to you, as well as the cost of tuition, housing, and student living expenses. There is this gap, right? There's this need of funding right there in the middle to allow you to meet your educational goals. So that is what a funding gap looks like. It looks like that gray area in between your funding sources and your cost of education. And what we'll do today is have the conversation of ways to close that gap and what that may look like. However, there are some things that we should consider as we are moving into a new academic year. You might have heard recently of federal student loan changes that have come from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Those federal student loan changes now have an impact on Grad Plus loans, Parent Plus loans. There's now aggregate limits on the federal loans that either a graduate or professional student may choose. So knowing that those, limits are now there are going to be a number of students that are now this year exploring additional ways to potentially close in that gap because they are most likely expecting a gap to be there. There is a thing to be mindful of, is the fact that some institutional funding will vary year by year. So I'm a person that loves to use examples, so I'll use one of my own. But in my undergraduate career, there were times throughout my educational pathway where I may or may not had a funding gap. So as a freshman in college, there were a number of scholarships that I went after, and that helped alleviate that funding gap. And the closer I got to graduation, I had experienced maybe once or twice in my educational pathway where a funding gap came about. And knowing that there was a number of ways that that might have happened. It could be due to, my adjusted gross income when I'm filling out the FAFSA. It could be due to a scholarship that was only available to me as a first year student. There are so many factors to consider when you are thinking about institutional funding. And I want to make sure that you know that as we are looking at funding coming from an institution, that these things can vary year by year. So you always want to make sure that you're planning ahead, especially if you do anticipate there being a funding gap there. A 529 plan will allow the flexibility for you to begin saving early and consistently to alleviate any future educational expenses, especially out of pocket expenses. So, if you are someone that is planning to pursue graduate school in the near future or even an undergraduate education, and you have a little bit of time, I would encourage you to consider a 529 plan, as this is a way for you to start saving early so that when those expenses do arise, you are best prepared on ways to manage them. And even if you are a current student, a current undergraduate or graduate or professional student, that does not necessarily mean that you have to stop saving as a student. If anything, it is an encouragement that you continue to save, especially as you are progressing through your educational pathway. You might have the plans one day to pursue a master's degree or even further. And if so, having that plan in place will allow you to be able to alleviate some of those out-of-pocket expenses as they do come up in the near future. And lastly, when you are considering funding opportunities, especially private loans, you're going to want to make sure that you are considering your state's nonprofit lender, which here in the state of North Carolina is NC Assist. So, as I mentioned, if you're anticipating a funding gap or if you're planning for the future and you're wanting to be best prepared for if a funding gap does arrive, here are some ways that you can prepare. So, how to close that gap? Let's say that you've explored all sources of funding and all sources of funding have been exhausted. You've looked at scholarships, grants, federal aid, you've looked in other places and you still have a gap there. An alternative student loan may be a good option for you. And here's a few things that you should know. First, you should research the institution's preferred lender list. While not every college or university will have a preferred lender list, as it is optional, if your college or university does have a list, I would encourage that be the first place that you look. It's easy to find this list if it does exist. What I would encourage is looking up that college or university that you plan to attend and preferred lender list behind it in a Google search. And if there is one available to you, it will be shown on your college or university's financial aid website. So it is best that you connect with your school's financial aid office and website to kind of help you see what your options are. This preferred lender list will give you a snapshot of the lenders that most work with that college or university. So these are where your students, if the students on that campus are borrowing, these are the lenders that they are borrowing from. So having this list as a reference point allows you to see how lenders compare side by side. And if you have any further questions, if you need to look into any lenders a little bit more, you have the access to do so. When you're comparing lender lists, there's a few things for you to be mindful of. First, I would say customer service. As you are looking at a loan and you're considering a loan, you're going to want to make sure that if you have a question or if you need to reach out to someone about the status of your application, that you have access to them. Does this lender have a call center? Do they have a chat function or a way to get in contact, maybe through email with someone directly so you can have these conversations? Customer service is going to be the best way for you to make sure that you're having those conversations with lenders, and you want to make sure that it is something that is offered to you as a potential borrower. You want to be mindful of what that pre-qualification process consists of. So, what are the application requirements? Do you potentially need a cosigner to be able to qualify for this loan? What is the interest rate of that loan? Is it a fixed interest rate? Are there any origination or pre-application fees that are associated with that loan? And what are the borrower benefits? If you are a potential borrower, what is something that you can look forward to after your time of borrowing with this lender? Are there financial wellness resources? Are there scholarship opportunities? Are there potential perks like rate deductions if you are now within repayment or a grace period? What are those benefits that are available to you now as a borrower with this lender? And again, you want to make sure that you are considering the nonprofit lender in that state to make sure that you are meeting a competitive rate. When you're considering private loans, you want to consider interest rates. So, unlike traditional loans that are maybe offered by banks or credit unions, private lenders have the ability to create their own rules and the flexibility to set their own rates, which will create a broad range of loan options to you. So rates can range anywhere between 6 to 18%. And there's going to be several factors that come into place that cause the rate to be much higher depending on your risk factors. So you want to make sure when you are considering taking out that loan, what is that interest rate? You might have heard me earlier mention, is the interest rate fixed? Could that interest rate change over time? And if so, you want to make sure that the decisions that you are making today, that you are fully in understanding of how that will impact you in the future. So you always want to be very mindful of what those interest rates are. And when you are looking at that preferred lender list, if your college or university offers it, you are able to compare lenders side by side and also see what each lender's interest rate is as well. You want to maintain creditworthiness and responsible spending and borrowing. So, as we know, most education loans are credit driven for young adults. It's our first time kind of starting to build credit. I know for myself, as an undergraduate student, that was my first space of accessing credit is borrowing using student loans. And knowing that you want to make sure that you're considering ways of building credit and doing it responsibly. As a graduate and professional student, we do realize that the cost of tuition is going to be a lot higher than undergraduate tuition. And knowing that, you want to also make sure that you're considering realistic options and that that future career that you're pursuing has the earnings that are necessary to be able to pay back on that loan. So if you are pursuing a graduate or professional degree and you are potentially borrowing at a lot higher rate than others, you want to make sure that that future career that you're pushing after, that you have what's necessary in place as far as career earnings to be able to make successful payments on that loan in the future. So let's talk a little bit about North Carolina's nonprofit lender, NC Assist. So here in the state, here at College Foundation Incorporated, we offer NC Student Assist at both the undergraduate and graduate and professional level, as well as NC Parent Assist to help bridge that gap between financial aid and college costs. So as we've been talking about that building or closing the gap, that funding gap that may exist, if that is apparent, this is now the opportunity for you to consider your state's nonprofit lender to support you in closing that gap or to bridge that gap. Eligibility requirements for the NC Assist loan is that you must be the age of 17 years or older. You must be enrolled at least half-time at an eligible nonprofit Title IV institution in a degree-seeking program. You must have that North Carolina connection. So you must either be a North Carolina resident or an out-of-state student attending a North Carolina college or university. So as long as you have that connection to the state of North Carolina, you are able to utilize NC Assist. So even if you are a North Carolina resident that is choosing to attend a college or university outside of the state of North Carolina, you're also eligible, as well as coming into the state of North Carolina to attend a college or university. That is your North Carolina connection. You must be credit worthy and have the required credit score or have a cosigner who meets those credit requirements. So you do have the ability to use a cosigner with NC Assist. You must be a US citizen or eligible non-citizen. You must meet other federal student eligibility requirements as certified by the school. So you must maintain SAP, which is satisfactory academic progress. And you have to be in good standing on any other CFI loans. So that one is very particular to if you are pursuing education further, maybe you are now a graduate or professional student and you've utilized NC Assist maybe within your undergraduate career. If so, you want to make sure that you are in good standing on those loans prior to moving forward with a new loan with NC Assist. So you need to be in good standing. on those CFI loans if you've used them prior. So let's talk about the application process for NC Assist. It's about 5 to 6 steps. It takes maybe no more than 15 minutes to apply for a loan option through NC Assist. First, you're going to want to fill out your application, and you can do so by using your CFNC credentials to log in. We're going to second do a credit check. If you have limited credit history, this would be the time where it may be best to have conversations with a potential cosigner to help you qualify for that loan. Once that credit check has been met, we will then work directly with your school to certify the loan, and that is ourselves, NC Assist as the lender, and that college or university working together to be on the same page. Fourth, we're going to have you review and accept your loan offer. And then lastly, sign any documents so that we are able to disperse the funds to that college or university that you plan to attend. And lastly, if you anticipate needing additional funding within the next year, maybe you anticipate that funding gap still being there, you always have the ability to reapply next year if necessary. So let's talk about the loan options that are currently available with NC Assist. So the NC Student Assist, this is both for undergraduate and graduate or professional students. For loans beginning on or before April 30th of 2027, the following interest rate is a 7.75, and that is a fixed interest rate with no origination fees associated with it. Again, that is one loan application. You would just specify whether or not you are an undergraduate or graduate or professional student. And again, that is a fixed interest rate. I've included a QR code here for you in case you want to look at that student loan option a little bit closer. So that is there for you, as well as a comparison to how NC Assist can compare to federal direct loans as well. For NC Parent Assist, these are for parents of any undergraduate degree seeking students. So these are for any loans beginning on or before April 30th of 2027. The interest rate for the NC Parent Assist is at a 6.95. Again, that is a fixed interest rate with no origination fees. And again, this is only eligible for students within undergraduate degrees. So again, a QR code is provided for you if you would like to look at that a little bit closer, as well as how the Parent Assist loan compares up to Direct Plus loans for parents. And as you may remember from our conversation earlier, with most recently federal loan changes, Parent Plus loans will now be capped. So knowing that there may need to be additional ways of finding funding, especially if parents are supporting their students in that space. So some key benefits from NC Assist. NC Assist has no fees, no origination or pre-application fees. We strive on having a competitive fixed interest rate to really support students across the state of North Carolina with achieving and attending college and it being affordable to do so. There's a simple application process. It takes maybe less than 10 to 15 minutes to complete. Again, we are working directly with your school on certifying that loan. There are benefits such as a rate discount for anyone who chooses to go into auto draft once they are in repayment. So that is a perk to you. And there is that grace period there for student assistance loans if necessary, that 6-month grace period. And again, we are the state's nonprofit lender. So making sure that college is attainable for not only students, but adult learners here in the state of North Carolina. So how can NC Assist help? So we really strive to make sure that there are a number of opportunities available to potential and future borrowers. But even if not borrowing from NC Assist, there is the NC Assist No Essay Scholarship opportunity. This is a scholarship that we offer on a monthly basis. It takes about 5 to 6 minutes to complete. I usually encourage parents and students to just set a reminder in their phone every month to complete this application. Again, it really takes no time. You do not have to be a borrower from NC Assist to utilize the NC Assist No Essay Scholarship. However, we may have some that are borrowers as well. You have to be attending a North Carolina college or university or have that North Carolina connection, which I'll share in the next slide. But this is a photo of just some of our previous or recent recipients of the NC Assist No Essay Scholarship. And as you can tell, they are all attending different colleges and universities across the state of North Carolina. And they could be either, undergraduate students, professional, master's degree, graduate degree students, or even adult learners. So there is a number of ways for you to get involved. For our eligibility requirements for the NC Assist No Essay Scholarship, you have to be at least the age of 18 years or older and have that North Carolina connection. So be either a resident of North Carolina who is a student or a parent of a student who's currently attending or will attend a college or university in the state within 12 months of entering this giveaway as a new or continuing student. So one thing to mention here, you can either be a student or a parent of a student. So in a way, you could get two entries per month necessarily if you wanted. But this is encouraging our parents to get involved as well in case you are wanting to support your student with finding scholarship opportunities. You can also be a resident of another U.S. state who is a student or a parent of a student who's currently attending or will attend a college or university in the state of North Carolina within 12 months. So that is your North Carolina connection of being eligible for the scholarship, as well as having a valid Social Security. Financial wellness resources are available to you. So in addition to helping students and the parents pay for college, we want to make sure that you also have these financial wellness resources at your fingertips. There are a number of topics available on the site, things from types of financial aid, how to continue education, especially if you are an adult learner. We talk about credit and debt management, any type of financial literacy topic that you can think of. You could go to this site and potentially find supporting resources to help you there. So we would definitely encourage you utilizing our financial wellness site if you are a potential borrower, a future borrower, or even someone that is just in need of finding free financial wellness resources. These are at your disposal. Outreach and events are really big for NC Assist. We love being able to join you. Maybe that is within your college or university, maybe within your admissions office or financial aid office, as well as being able to talk directly with parents and students about the loan options that are available to them. So we regularly participate in local events across the state to connect and engage with college access and financial aid professionals. We are able to attend campus visits, open houses, and graduate fairs. So if you are ever having students on campus or parents on campus and you want them to be able to learn more about NC Assist or at least have us as a resource, we are more than happy to be in that space. We are also invited to financial wellness workshops or able to support in-person presentations or webinars. So as I do webinars very frequently for NC Assist, if you have any spaces that you are hosting or any presentations and you would like to invite someone to come in and support the conversation, more than happy to do that. And lastly, conferences and sponsorships. So we really look forward to connecting further with financial aid professionals throughout the year at conferences, but also if you are someone hosting an event this year, next year, and you're planning ahead and you are looking at sponsorship opportunities and you want to see if NC Assist would be interested, we would definitely encourage you to connect further to see if that works best. So in the next slide, I will share with you best ways to get in contact with not only myself, but also our offices that are here to support. So you can reach us online at ncassist.org. I will tell you that is the best place to start. It gives you everything to know about our student loan and parent loan options that are available. You can reach us through email at ncassist@cfi.org. We do have a call center here based in Raleigh, North Carolina, that is more than happy to support you in any questions you may have, or if you are working directly with students that may have questions or even parents, you are definitely encouraged to utilize that call center to get a live response to any questions that you may have. I am program services representative for NC Assist, so I'm more than happy to support you in the space of if you have any questions pertaining to your loan application or you need to be rerouted to the call center, or maybe you have an event that's upcoming that you would like NC Assist to have a presence. I would definitely encourage you to reach out to myself directly. And then if you are within financial aid or within admissions, we would encourage you to order any materials from NC Assist that you think would best fit the parents and students on your campus. So I've included a QR code here that takes you directly to our site that allows you to just put in a request to order NC Assist materials. I'll reach out to you directly to kind of strategize what would be best for the students and parents that you are hoping to support. And again, if this conversation needs to go further, if you would look forward to having someone in person at campus events to connect further with your students and parents, I would definitely be happy to do so. So these are the resources available to you. I am now going to take a glance over to the Q&A section of our webinar to see if there's any questions that anyone has. And again, if there are questions that are best for the group, this would be the place to ask. If you have any specific questions, I would definitely encourage you to reach out to me directly for those questions.